The wrapper around Adunni's waist felt like it was soaked in shame as she stood frozen in the middle of Dugbe Market, watching her husband of 12 years publicly declare his love for another woman. The bustling sounds of traders hawking yams, tomatoes, and also oak fabric seemed to fade into a distant hum as Kehinde's voice boomed across the crowded marketplace. "People of Ibadan, hear me well." Kehinde stood on an overturned crate, his muscular frame draped in his finest agbada, the one Adunni had saved months to buy him for their anniversary. "I, Kehinde Adebayo, master hunter of this city, announce my engagement to Princess Folake Adeniran, daughter of Chief Adeniran of Victoria Island. What would you do if your husband abandoned you for a rich princess? Hit like if you believe betrayal never pays, and tell us where you're watching from." The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. Adunni felt her knees buckle as the weight of humiliation crashed over her like the thunderous rain of the harmattan season. Her fellow market women, who had been her companions through thick and thin, turned to stare at her with a mixture of pity and shock. Some covered their mouths in horror, others whispered behind their hands. But Kehinde called out Mama Sidi, the elderly woman who sold palm oil 2 stalls away. "What about your wife, Adunni? What about your children?" Kehinde's eyes found Adunni in the crowd, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of the man she had fallen in love with at 17, the young hunter who had promised her the world under the ancient Iroko tree in their village of Isayin. But that flicker died as quickly as it had appeared. "Adunni has served her purpose," he declared, his voice cold as harmattan wind. "But a man must rise in this world. Princess Folake can give me things that a poor village girl never could. She has connections in Lagos, in Abuja. She has money, influence, a future." The words hit Adunni like poison arrows. 12 years of marriage, 2 children, countless nights of supporting his hunting expeditions while she sold pepper and tomatoes to keep their family fed, all reduced to served her purpose. "You promised me forever," Adunni whispered, but her voice was lost in the chaos of the marketplace. Kehinde jumped down from the crate and began walking toward the motor park, where a shiny black jeep waited, undoubtedly sent by his precious princess. As he passed Adunni, he leaned close to her ear. "Pack your things and return to your father's compound in Isayin. I'll send money for the children when I can." His breath smelled of palm wine and betrayal. "This is bigger than us, Adunni. Try to understand." Understanding. How could she understand watching her husband choose wealth over love, status over family, a pampered Lagos princess over the woman who had borne his children and built their home with her bare hands? As Kehinde's figure disappeared into the jeep, Adunni became aware of the crowd still staring at her. Some faces showed sympathy, others barely concealed excitement at witnessing such dramatic gossip. She pulled her head tie lower over her face and began gathering the scattered tomatoes that had fallen from her basket during the shock. "Adunni, my daughter," Mama Sidi approached, her weathered hands gentle on Adunni's shoulders. "Come, let us close your store. You should not be here now." But Adunni straightened her spine, a fire beginning to kindle in her chest where her heart used to be. "No, Mama. I will finish my day's business. My children need to eat tonight, and they will eat." The older woman nodded approvingly. "Oh, you are your mother's daughter. Strong like the Iroko tree." As the afternoon wore on, Adunni mechanically sold her wares, accepting the concerned glances and whispered condolences of her fellow traders. But beneath her composed exterior, her mind was racing. Kehinde thought he could simply discard her like yesterday's newspaper. He thought she would quietly slink back to her father's house in shame. He had forgotten something crucial about the woman he married. Adunni was not just any village girl. She was the granddaughter of Aya Agba Folake, the most feared and respected medicine woman in all of Oyo State. And she had learned more than just how to sell tomatoes at her grandmother's knee. As the sun began to set over the corrugated iron roofs of Ibadan, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Adunni made a decision. She would not be returning to her father's compound in defeat. She would not let her children grow up believing their mother was someone who could be thrown away when something better came along. Kehinde wanted to play with forces beyond his understanding. He was about to learn that some wives bite back. That evening, as Adunni walked home to her mother's flat in Agodi, she stopped by her grandmother's old shrine, now tended by her cousin Moremi. The scent of burning incense and palm kernels filled the air as she knelt before the carved wooden figures her grandmother had passed down through generations. Aya Akbar, she whispered to the spirits of her ancestors, your granddaughter calls for justice. The flame of the single candle flickered, as if in response. 3 weeks had passed since the public humiliation at Dugbe Market, and Princess Folake Adunni was living her best life in the penthouse suite of the Transcorp Hilton in Abuja. She reclined on Italian leather furniture, her perfectly manicured nails, painted in the latest shade from Paris, tapping against her iPhone as she scrolled through Instagram photos of Lego socialites. At 26, Folake was everything that money and privilege could create: tall, elegant, with skin that glowed from expensive treatments and a wardrobe that could feed a village for months. Her father, Chief Adunni, had made his fortune in oil and politics, ensuring that his only daughter wanted for nothing. But what Folake wanted most was something money couldn't directly buy: excitement, adventure, and a man who could match her in passion. Enter Kehinde Adebayo. She had first seen him at a cultural festival in Lagos, where he was demonstrating traditional hunting techniques to a crowd of fascinated city dwellers. While other women giggled at his rural accent and simple clothes, Folake had seen something else entirely: raw masculinity, untamed energy, and a hunger in his eyes that matched her own appetite for life. The fact that he was married had made the chase even more thrilling. Folake, my precious jewel, her father's voice interrupted her thoughts as he entered the suite, followed by 2 of his ever-present bodyguards. Chief Adunni was a man who commanded respect wherever he went, his presence filling any room like expensive cologne. Daddy, Folake smiled, not bothering to get up from her lounging position. How did the meeting with the petroleum minister go? Profitable, as always. He settled his considerable bulk into the chair across from her. But we are not here to discuss my business. We are here to discuss yours. This hunter you've been carrying on with. Kehinde is not just any hunter, Daddy. He's going to be my husband. Chief Adunni's laugh was like thunder rolling across the savannah. My daughter, you cannot be serious. Marry a village hunter. What will people say? They'll say that Princess Folake Adunni gets what she wants, as always. She finally sat up, her gold jewelry catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Besides, didn't you always tell me that a woman should choose a man who can protect her? Kehinde is the finest hunter in all of Oyo State. He's strong, he's passionate, and most importantly. She paused for effect, he chose me over his previous life. Previous life? You mean his wife and children? Folake waved her hand dismissively. A mistake of youth. He married beneath his station, Daddy. Now he's correcting that error. What she didn't tell her father was how methodically she had gone about seducing Kehinde away from his family. It had started with carefully orchestrated encounters, showing up at the same markets where he sold his game, inviting him to exclusive parties in Lagos, gradually introducing him to a world of wealth and influence he had never imagined. The final stroke had been offering him a position as head of security for her father's extensive properties, complete with a salary that was 10 times what he made from hunting. All he had to do was leave his old life behind. And his wife has accepted this arrangement? Chief Adunni asked, his tone skeptical. His ex-wife will adapt. Village women always do. Besides, I'm prepared to be generous. I'll make sure she has enough money to care for the children. But even as she spoke the words, Folake felt a strange unease. She had expected Adunni to fade quietly into the background, perhaps return to her village in shame and defeat. Instead, according to Kehinde's reports, the woman was still living in Ibadan, still selling in the same market, and showing no signs of the broken spirit Folake had anticipated. It was annoying. Chief Adunni studied his daughter's face with the shrewd eyes that had made him one of Nigeria's most successful businessmen. "You're worried about something?" "Not worried, just curious." Kehinde says his ex-wife has been acting strangely. Asking questions about our wedding plans, about where we'll be living. "It's probably nothing, just a woman struggling to accept reality." Or, our father's voice dropped to the low, dangerous tone that had intimidated presidents and cabinet ministers. "It's a woman planning something." Never underestimate a wife scorned, my daughter. They can be more dangerous than any business rival. Folake laughed, but it sounded forced even to her own ears. "Daddy, what could a village tomato seller possibly do to us? We have money, influence, connections." "She has, what?" "A stall in Dugbe Market." "She has something you don't understand, Folake. She has everything to lose and nothing left to fear. That makes her unpredictable." As if summoned by their conversation, Kehinde arrived at the hotel, looking uncomfortable in the expensive suit Folake had bought him. Even after weeks of luxury, he still moved like a man who belonged in the forest, not the penthouse. "My love," Folake rose to greet him with a kiss, inhaling the scent of his cologne. She had thrown away all his traditional hunting perfumes on their first night together. "How was your day?" "Busy. I had to go back to Ibadan to collect some of my things from the old house." His voice carried a note of tension that made Folake look at him more closely. "And did you see her?" "Briefly. She was different." "Different how?" Kehinde loosened his tie, a gesture that reminded Folake why she had been drawn to him in the first place. There was something untamable about him, even dressed in designer clothes. "Calm. Too calm. Before, even when she was angry with me, there was fire in her eyes. Now there's ice." Chief Adunni and Folake exchanged glances. "What exactly did she say to you?" Chief Adunni asked. "That's just it, she barely said anything. Just told me that I should be careful what I wish for, because I might get exactly what I deserve." Kehinde sat heavily on the couch. "And there was something else. The neighbor said she's been spending time with her cousin Moemi, the one who took over her grandmother's practice." The silence that followed was thick with implication. Even in the modern city of Abuja, even among the educated elite, certain things were still whispered about with respect and fear. "You're talking about juju," Chief Adunni said flatly. "I'm talking about a woman who thinks she can fight money and power with old wives' tales," Folake snapped, but her voice was sharper than necessary. "Daddy, you're making me paranoid over nothing." But that night, as she lay in Kehinde's arms in their luxurious hotel bed, Folake found herself staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling that somewhere in Ibadan, a woman was planning something that would change all their lives forever. The compound of the late Aya Agba Folake had not hosted a gathering this significant in over 5 years. Women from across Ibadan and beyond had been arriving since dawn, their colorful wrappers and head ties creating a rainbow of solidarity in the dusty courtyard. Adunni watched from the doorway of her grandmother's old shrine as market women, teachers, nurses, and even a few wealthy Lagos wives filed in, each carrying offerings of kola nuts, palm wine, or bitter kola. Her cousin Moremi, now the keeper of their grandmother's spiritual legacy, moved among the women like a graceful dancer, her white wrapper and elaborate gele marking her status as a priestess. At 35, Moremi commanded the same respect their grandmother once had, but with a modern twist. She held a master's degree in psychology from the University of Lagos and ran a successful counseling practice alongside her traditional duties. "Sister," Moremi approached Adunni, her voice low and musical, "the sisters are ready to hear your story." Adunni nodded, smoothing her own wrapper, her finest blue osook, the one she had worn to her wedding 12 years ago. Today, it would serve a different purpose entirely. As she stepped into the center of the gathering, the women formed a circle around her. These were not just any women, they were the backbone of their communities, the ones who kept families together, businesses running, and traditions alive. Each had her own story of struggle, betrayal, or loss. Each had survived and thrived despite the obstacles placed in their path. "My sisters," Adunni began, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air, "I call upon you today not for pity, but for justice. Not for revenge, but for restoration of balance." An older woman from Abeokuta, known as Mama Ranti, spoke first. "We heard what that foolish man did to you at Dugbe Market. The disrespect, the public humiliation. Tell us, daughter, what is it you require?" Adunni had spent weeks preparing for this moment, consulting with Moemi, studying their grandmother's old journals, and most importantly, gathering intelligence about her husband's new life with his precious princess. Kehinde believes that money and status make him untouchable. Princess Folake believes that wealth can buy her anything she desires, including another woman's husband. They both have forgotten something important, that every action has consequences, and some debts cannot be paid with money. The women murmured their agreement. These were women who understood that respect could not be purchased, that integrity was worth more than gold, and that some lines should never be crossed. Moemi stepped forward, holding a carved wooden bowl filled with palm wine. "Our grandmother always taught us that the universe seeks balance. When someone takes what is not theirs, when they break sacred promises, when they humiliate those who have served faithfully, the universe demands an accounting. But this is not about dark magic or cursing," Adunni continued, accepting the bowl from her cousin. "This is about using the truth as our weapon, intelligence as our strategy, and unity as our strength." Kehinde and his princess think they know everything about power. They are about to learn what real power looks like. She took a sip of the palm wine and passed it to the next woman. As the bowl made its way around the circle, each woman shared a piece of information, a connection, or a resource that could be useful. Mama Kemi, who worked as a cleaner in one of Chief Adeniran's office buildings in Lagos, revealed that the princess had never actually graduated from the London university she claimed to attend. The certificate on her father's wall was a fake. Sister Biodun, whose daughter worked in the immigration office, mentioned irregularities in some of Chief Adeniran's business visa applications. Mrs. Adebayo from the market union shared that several of the chief's companies had been avoiding their tax obligations for years. But the most interesting information came from an unexpected source, Sister Funmi, a quiet woman from Victoria Island who had remained silent until the bowl reached her. "I work as a private nurse for wealthy families in Lagos," she said softly. "Last month, I was called to treat a young woman who had been badly beaten by her boyfriend. The woman was too terrified to report it to the police, but she told me something interesting. Her boyfriend was Princess Folake's former bodyguard, and he was fired for refusing to participate in something he called cleanup operations." The circle went completely silent. "What kind of cleanup operations?" Moemi asked. "Making problems disappear. People who ask too many questions about the family's business." The bodyguard said the princess was more ruthless than her father when it came to protecting their secrets. He also said. Sister Funmi paused, looking around the circle nervously. He also said that Kehinde was not the first married man she had stolen. There were others, and when she grew tired of them, they simply vanished from Lagos society. A cold wind seemed to blow through the compound despite the morning heat. Adunni felt something crystallize inside her chest, not hatred, but clarity. This was no longer just about her marriage or her wounded pride. This was about protecting her children, her community, and possibly even Kehinde himself from people who viewed human beings as disposable toys. "My sisters," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks, "we are not going to destroy these people. We are going to expose them. We are going to show the world who they really are, and we are going to do it using the one thing they fear most, the truth." Over the next 2 hours, the women developed a plan that would have impressed any military strategist. They would use their networks, their connections, and their collective knowledge to carefully document and expose Chief Adinaran's business crimes, Princess Folake's fake credentials, and the family's history of making people disappear. But they would do it slowly, carefully, building an airtight case that could not be dismissed or covered up with bribes or intimidation. "And what about your husband?" asked Mama Ranti. Adunni smiled for the first time in weeks, and the expression was both beautiful and terrifying. "Kehinde will have a choice to make. He can stand with the truth and return to his family and his honor, or he can fall with the lies he has chosen to embrace. Either way, he will finally understand the difference between a woman and a princess." As the gathering began to disperse, each woman taking specific assignments and contact information, Moremi pulled Adunni aside. "Sister, are you sure about this path? Once we begin, there will be no turning back. These people have killed to protect their secrets. Then we make sure we are smarter, faster, and more united than they are," Adunni replied. "Besides, what choice do I have? If I do nothing, I lose everything anyway. If I fight, at least my children will know their mother was not someone who could be discarded without consequences." That evening, as Adunni prepared dinner for her children, 8-year-old Odeola and 10-year-old Babatunde, she felt lighter than she had since the day of her public humiliation. Her children, who had been confused and hurt by their father's sudden abandonment, seemed to sense the change in her energy. "Mama," little Odeola asked as they shared a simple meal of rice and stew, "are you feeling better now?" "Yes, my love. Mama is feeling much better. And soon, everything is going to be okay." As she tucked them into bed that night, Babatunde, who was old enough to understand more about their situation, asked the question she had been dreading. "Mama, is Baba ever coming home?" Adunni sat on the edge of his bed, stroking his hair the way her own mother used to do for her. "I don't know, my son. But I promise you this, whether he comes home or not, you and your sister will always have everything you need. Mama is going to make sure of that." "How, Mama?" "Because your mama is stronger than she looks, smarter than people think, and she has something more powerful than money or status. She has the truth, and she has people who love her." Comment your thoughts on Adunni's plan. Do you think she can take down the powerful princess? Don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who loves African marriage drama. 6 months after the women's gathering, the carefully laid plans were beginning to bear fruit in ways that even Adunni had not expected. It started small, a newspaper article questioning Chief Adinaran's tax records, an anonymous tip to immigration authorities about forged documents, whispered conversations in Lagos social circles about Princess Folake's questionable credentials. But the real earthquake began when Sister Fami's contact, the former bodyguard named Sigan, finally agreed to speak to an investigative journalist from Channels Television. Kehinde stood in the marble bathroom of the Adinaran family mansion in Victoria Island, staring at his reflection in the gold-framed mirror. 6 months of luxury had changed him physically. He was softer around the middle, his hands no longer calloused from hunting, his skin pale from spending days in air-conditioned offices instead of under the African sun. But the changes that worried him most were the ones he couldn't see in the mirror. He had become a stranger to himself. "Kehinde." Folake's voice carried from the bedroom, sharp with irritation. "Come and see this nonsense." He found her sitting on their king-size bed, tablet in hand, her face twisted with fury. The screen showed a news report with the headline, "Chief Adinaran under investigation for tax evasion and immigration fraud." "They are saying Daddy owes over 200 million naira in unpaid taxes," she snarled. "And they are questioning my university degree. How dare they?" Kehinde sat heavily beside her, feeling a familiar weight settling in his chest, the same feeling he used to get as a child when he knew he had done something terribly wrong and was about to be caught. Maybe this is a sign," he said quietly. "A sign of what?" "That we've made mistakes. That I've made mistakes." Folake turned to look at him as if he had grown a second head. "You're talking like a village fool. This is just business, Kehinde. Daddy's competitors are trying to bring him down. It happens all the time. But Kehinde wasn't convinced. Over the past weeks, he had noticed things: phone calls that stopped when he entered a room, hushed conversations between Folake and her father, the way certain business associates had started avoiding the family's social events. His unease deepened when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he hadn't seen in months, his old friend Will from Ibadan. Kehinde, my brother, Will's voice was tense. We need to talk. Can you come to Ibadan today? I'm busy with. This is about your wife. Your real wife. And your children. Something in his friend's tone made Kehinde's blood run cold. What about them? Just come. Meet me at the usual spot, Mama Koro's beer parlor. And Kehinde, come alone. 2 hours later, Kehinde sat across from Will in the dimly lit beer parlor where they had shared countless conversations during their youth. His friend looked nervous, constantly glancing toward the door. You need to be very careful, my brother, Will began without preamble. There are people asking questions about you, about your new family. What kind of questions? The dangerous kind. The kind that end with people disappearing. Will leaned closer, lowering his voice. Do you know what happened to Princess Folake's last boyfriend? The banker from First Bank. Kehinde shook his head, though he remembered Folake mentioning someone briefly, dismissively. He was asking too many questions about her father's business. One day he was there, the next day his family was told he had died in a car accident in Rivers State. But funny thing, his car was found in Lagos, and he was supposed to be at work that day in Abuja. The beer in Kehinde's hand suddenly tasted bitter. And before him, Will continued, there was a lawyer who was helping some villages fight against Chief Adunni's oil exploration. The lawyer was married too, had children. Princess Folake seduced him away from his family, just like she did you. When the case became too public, he disappeared. Family got money, no questions asked. You're trying to scare me with rumors. I'm trying to save your life. Will's voice rose, then dropped again as other patrons turned to look. Kehinde, you know me. We grew up together. I've never lied to you. These people are dangerous. And now that the government is investigating them. What does this have to do with Adunni? Will was quiet for a long moment, studying his friend's face. Your wife hasn't been sitting quietly, my brother. She's been busy. Very busy. Doing what? What do you think? You humiliated her in public, abandoned your children, threw away 12 years of marriage for money and status. Did you think she would just disappear? Kehinde felt something cold crawling up his spine. Adunni doesn't have that kind of power. She's just a market woman. A market woman whose grandmother was the most feared spiritual leader in all of Oyo State. A market woman who has connections throughout the markets, the schools, the hospitals, the government offices. A market woman who, it turns out, is a lot smarter and more dangerous than the spoiled princess you traded her for. The full implications of what his friend was saying began to dawn on Kehinde. You're saying Adunni is behind the investigations. I'm saying that a lot of very powerful women have been very interested in seeing justice done for your wife. And these women have resources, connections, and most importantly, they have nothing to lose by telling the truth. Kehinde's phone buzzed with a text from Folake, where are you? Daddy wants to see us immediately. Emergency. I have to go, he told Will, standing on shaking legs. Kehinde, his friend caught his arm. Your children ask about you every day. Your wife, your real wife, she's stronger than she's ever been, but she's also lonelier than she's ever been. You still have a choice. You can still come home. And if I don't? Will's expression was grim. Then you'd better pray that whatever the Adunnians are planning to do to protect themselves, they consider you valuable enough to keep alive. As Kehinde drove back to Lagos in the fading afternoon light, his mind raced with questions and fears he had been suppressing for months. He thought about his children, about the way Adeola had cried when he told her daddy had to go away for work. He thought about Adunni, about the last time he had seen her, calm, composed, and somehow more beautiful than he remembered. Most of all, he thought about the choice Will had mentioned. Did he really still have one? Or had he already crossed a line from which there could be no return? His phone rang again. This time it was Chief Adunni himself. "Boy, where are you? We have serious problems, and we need to make some serious decisions. Some people are asking questions they shouldn't be asking, and some people might need to stop asking questions permanently. Do you understand me?" Kehinde understood perfectly. And for the first time since he had walked away from his family, he was truly afraid. The tension is rising. What choice will Kehinde make? Drop a comment with your predictions and don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to see it. The knock on Adunni's door came at exactly midnight on a rainy Tuesday in October. She had been expecting it for days, ever since Sister Fami had called to warn her that things were moving fast in Lagos, too fast for the Adunni's comfort. Through the window, she could see Kehinde's silhouette in the flickering light of the compound's security lamp. He was alone, soaked through, and carrying nothing but a small bag. Most telling of all, he was no longer wearing the expensive clothes Princess Folake had bought him. Instead, he was dressed in his old hunting outfit, simple brown trousers and a faded blue shirt. Adunni opened the door slowly, studying the man she had been married to for 12 years. The softness of luxury had left him quickly once the pressure began. He looked thinner, older, and his eyes held a haunted quality that reminded her of a trapped animal. "Adunni," his voice was barely above a whisper. "May I come in?" She stepped aside without speaking, watching as he entered the small living room where their children's school books were scattered on the center table, where his own hunting photographs still hung on the walls despite everything. "The children are sleeping," she said finally. "I know. I've been watching the house for 3 days, making sure it was safe to approach." "Safe from whom?" Kehinde sank into his old chair, the wooden one with the carved armrest that he had made with his own hands during their second year of marriage. "From people who don't like loose ends. From people who solve problems by making them disappear." Adunni remained standing, her arms crossed. Even at midnight, even faced with her estranged husband's obvious distress, she maintained the composure that had carried her through the past 8 months. "So you finally realized what kind of people you chose over your family?" "I realized a lot of things. Too late, but I realized them." He looked up at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. "Adunni, I need you to know that they are planning something. Chief Adunni thinks you're behind the investigations, the news reports, the questions about their business. And am I?" The question hung in the air between them like smoke from a cooking fire. "I don't care anymore," Kehinde said. "Whether you are or aren't, whether you can forgive me or can't, whether we can be a family again or not, none of that matters right now. What matters is that you and the children are in danger. From your precious princess. From people who have killed to protect smaller secrets than what's coming out now. Adunni, the government investigation found bodies. 3 men who got too close to exposing Chief Adunni's business. The princess, she's not what I thought she was." Adunni finally sat down, choosing the chair farthest from him. "Tell me what happened." Over the next hour, Kehinde told her everything. About the forged documents, the murdered investigators, the way Princess Folake had laughed when her father suggested that Adunni might have to be handled permanently. He told her about the moment he realized he had traded his soul for fool's gold, and the desperate plan he had hatched to escape Lagos without alerting the Adunnians to his intentions. "They think I'm in Abuja on business for them," he concluded. "I have maybe 12 hours before they realize I'm gone. And then they'll come looking for all of us." Adunni was quiet for a long time, processing everything he had told her. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and sure. "They are too late." What do you mean? I mean that tomorrow morning, the EFCC will arrest Chief Adunni on charges of money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit murder. The immigration authorities will arrest Princess Folake on charges of document fraud and conspiracy. And the police will arrest both of them on 3 counts of murder, based on testimony from witnesses who are already in protective custody. Kehinde stared at her as if she had spoken in tongues. How? Did you think I spent 8 months crying into my wrapper? Adunni's smile was sharp as a hunting knife. My husband, you forgot something important about the woman you married. I am not just a market woman. I am not just a village girl. I am the granddaughter of Aya Agba Folake, the daughter of Chief Adebe of Iseyin, and the mother of your children. I am a woman who knows how to build networks, how to gather information, and how to be patient while justice takes its course. She stood and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain to reveal the quiet compound. Do you see that car by the gate? Those are federal agents, making sure we stay safe until the arrests are made. Do you see the man by the transformer? That's Inspector Adeyemi from the state police. And the woman selling suya on the corner. That's Agent Folake from the EFCC. You've been working with law enforcement. I've been working with everyone necessary to ensure that dangerous criminals face justice. The fact that those criminals happened to destroy my marriage was personal motivation. Kehinde was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the magnitude of what his wife had accomplished. And me? What happens to me? That depends. Are you here because you're running from them, or because you've remembered who you really are? Before he could answer, a small voice came from the hallway. Mama. I heard voices. Adeola appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. When she saw her father, she froze, as if she were seeing a ghost. Behind her, Babatunde appeared, taller than Kehinde remembered, his young face serious beyond his years. Baba. Adeola whispered. Kehinde's composure finally cracked. He knelt on the floor, opening his arms, and his daughter ran to him with the pure, uncomplicated love that only children possess. Babatunde followed more slowly, but when he reached his father, he wrapped his arms around him just as tightly. I'm sorry, Kehinde whispered into their hair, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry I left you. I'm so sorry I hurt your mama. I'm sorry for everything. Adunni watched the reunion with mixed emotions. The anger she had carried for 8 months warred with the love she had spent 12 years building, while the practical part of her mind calculated what his return would mean for their safety and their future. Children, she said gently, it's very late. You need to go back to bed. Is Baba coming home, Mama? Adeola asked, her small hand clutching Kehinde's shirt as if he might disappear again. We'll talk about it in the morning, Adunni replied. Right now, everyone needs to rest. After much coaxing and many promises that their father would still be there in the morning, the children returned to their room. Alone again, Adunni and Kehinde faced each other across the living room that had once been filled with laughter and shared dreams. You haven't answered my question, Adunni said. Are you here because you're running, or because you've remembered who you are? Kehinde stood slowly, his knees stiff from kneeling on the hard floor. I'm here because I finally understand what I threw away. I'm here because I realized that the man I became with them wasn't a man at all, he was a puppet, dancing for money and status while real men were at home taking care of their families. He moved closer, but stopped when he saw her tense. I'm here because I love you, Adunni. I never stopped loving you. I was just blinded by things that don't matter. I'm here because I want to be the husband you deserved all along, the father my children need, the man my own father raised me to be. And if I can't forgive you, if the trust is too broken to repair, then I'll still stay. I'll sleep on the floor, work to support you and the children, and spend every day trying to earn back what I threw away. Because running away once was the worst mistake of my life. I won't make it twice. At dawn, The sound of sirens in the distance told them that the arrests were beginning. Adunni made a simple breakfast of yam and eggs while Kehinde sat at the table, marveling at the mundane miracle of being in his own kitchen again. The children chattered excitedly, as if their father's presence had restored some essential balance to their world. By afternoon, the news was everywhere. Chief Adunni had been arrested at his Ikoyi mansion, Princess Folake at the airport trying to flee to Dubai. The headlines screamed about corruption, murder, and the fall of one of Nigeria's most powerful families. But in the small flat in Agodi, the most important news was quieter, a family beginning the slow, difficult work of healing. 3 months later, Kehinde stood before the same crowd at Dugbe Market, but this time his words carried a different message. "People of Ibadan," he called out, his voice strong but humble, "I stand before you as a man who lost his way and found it again. I stand before you as someone who learned that wealth without honor is poverty, that status without love is emptiness, and that no crown is worth the price of your soul." The crowd was different this time too, fewer sensation seekers, more people who had followed the entire story and come to witness its conclusion. Adunni stood beside him, not behind him, wearing her finest gele and the gold jewelry that had been her grandmother's. "I publicly dishonored my wife in this very spot," Kehinde continued. "Today, I publicly ask for her forgiveness and pledge my life to earning back the respect I threw away." He turned to Adunni, dropped to one knee, and held out a simple ring, not expensive, but crafted by his own hands from gold he had earned through honest work. "Adunni Adibeo, mother of my children, keeper of my heart, will you marry me again? Will you give me the chance to be the husband you always deserved?" The market fell silent except for the distant sound of generators and car horns. Adunni looked down at the man who had broken her heart, abandoned their children, and then found the courage to fight his way back to them. She thought of the grandmother who had taught her that true strength lay not in avoiding pain but in choosing love despite it. "Kehinde Adibeo," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the market, "I will marry you again. But this time, we marry as equals. This time, we build something that cannot be bought, stolen, or destroyed by anyone who thinks money is more powerful than love." The crowd erupted in cheers and ululations as she took the ring and placed it on her finger. But the real celebration was in the eyes of their children, who finally understood that sometimes, when people make mistakes, love really can find a way home. 6 months later, at their second wedding ceremony in the village of Iseyin, surrounded by the same trees where they had first fallen in love, Kehinde and Adunni exchanged vows that had been tested by fire and proven true. The guests included market women and university professors, traditional rulers and federal agents, family members and friends who had never stopped believing in the power of redemption. As they danced to the drums under the setting sun, Adunni reflected on the journey that had brought them back to this moment. She had learned that she was stronger than she ever imagined, that justice sometimes required patience, and that love, real love, could survive even the deepest betrayals. Kehinde had learned that a man's worth was not measured by his possessions but by his character, not by what others could give him but by what he could give others. Most importantly, he had learned that the greatest treasures in life were often the ones he had almost thrown away. And Princess Folake. She learned, in her prison cell, that some prices are too high to pay, some lines too dangerous to cross, and some women too dangerous to underestimate. What did you think of this powerful story of betrayal, justice, and redemption? Like and subscribe for more African folktales that speak to the heart. Share this with someone who needs to remember that love, when it's real, always finds a way home. Comment below, which moment in this story moved you the most?